Camp Mariposa serves children ages 9 through 12. It's a weekend-long camp that occurs 6 times a year, provided free to the families. And they come, and every kid has someone in their family that is important to them that is struggling with addiction. And so we focus on providing a safe place for them to talk about it, get some psychoeducation about addiction, as well as have some fun. Camp Mariposa is a place where kids transform, and I really think it's true.
Our goals are really for kids to feel empowered, to feel that they are not alone, that there are other kids who understand what their experience is, to be armed with information, and to know that they're really cared about. We want them to feel like they have the ability to make different decisions for themselves as they grow up and become teenagers and adults, and that their life is filled with possibilities. We know that kids coming from families with addiction are more likely to experience that themselves, and so we want to make sure that we're preparing them with information and providing them an opportunity to make different choices to change that intergenerational cycle of addiction.
Camp Outside the Box is a really great opportunity for some of the kids in the WISE program to have the full camp experience, because some other camps just don't have the facilities necessary for them to have that full experience. Sometimes what you're struggling with can make you feel so isolated and so different from everybody else that it just impacts everything. A lot of them have felt a lot of pain in their lives. Camp is a place where you can be surrounded by peers that have also had that struggle. And ultimately, there's so much potential for so much support everywhere, because everybody at camp has the same obstacles in front of them.
This really fits in with Compass Health's mission to serve our community in unique ways, and this is certainly a group of kids who don't have any other opportunities like this.
A lot of these kids would be enrolled in programs to help them out as much as possible with whatever they're struggling with, but they're so expensive.
Having the community support it, I think, is just huge. There's a lot that goes into it, providing the recreational activities that would be out of reach for these families.
And we hear from caregivers oftentimes how this has impacted their family, that they see that things are different and that their child is taking a different route and has a different perspective, and that's really important.
It's such a blessing to have this camp because, you know, he doesn't feel unwanted or unloved, and his self-confidence is so much better. He's just a happy kid, and I'm so thankful we have this camp.
I think everybody should know about camp, that you would be happy here.